You were trained to seek allies. Alone, that instinct marks you weak. Survival demands calcification. Sentiment dies. Loyalty rots. Power accrues only to the unsoftened. You were conditioned to see isolation as a defect, a signal that something went wrong, that you failed to integrate, failed to belong, failed to earn protection. This belief was installed early and reinforced constantly because it keeps you manageable. A man who fears being alone will accept almost any leash to avoid it. Isolation is not abandonment. It is exposure. When support disappears, what remains is not injustice, it is inventory. Your habits, your emotional dependencies, your untrained reactions, your hunger for reassurance. When no one is watching, no one correcting, no one applauding, you finally see what actually operates inside you. Most men never reach this point. They outsource stability to others and call it connection. Power systems don't fear the connected man, they fear the self-contained one. Isolation functions like cold water. It does not create weakness, it reveals it. The panic you feel when alone is not caused by solitude. It is caused by the sudden absence of buffers. No witnesses, no mirrors, no emotional scaffolding. Just you and your internal structure, if it exists at all. This is why isolation feels threatening, not because it harms you, but because it removes the lies. Most men confuse loneliness with danger because they were trained to survive in groups, not as sovereign units. Loyalty was framed as virtue, dependence as morality, independence as arrogance. But in competitive environments, biological, social, economic, groups do not protect the weak individual. They consume him slowly while praising his team spirit. Selection does not happen when you are surrounded. It happens when you are stripped. When you stand alone, there is no narrative to hide behind, no one to blame, no one to impress, no one to betray later. This is why isolation terrifies people. It forces responsibility to become total. Every failure traces directly back to you. Every success does too. That level of accountability is lethal to fragile identities. You were not abandoned because you are unworthy. You were isolated because your previous form cannot advance further. Environments tighten, resources concentrate, social tolerance shrinks. In those conditions, only hardened structures remain operational. Everything soft fractures under pressure. Isolation is the pressure chamber. Those who cannot function alone are not meant to lead, decide, or endure. They are meant to attach to stronger wills, louder voices, safer collectives. That is their evolutionary role, useful, replaceable, temporary. But if you are still standing while alone, that means something else is being tested. Isolation is a gate. Not everyone passes through. Most retreat back into noise, relationships, distractions, ideology, anything that restores the illusion of support. A few remain, not because they enjoy solitude, but because they understand its function. This is where selection begins. In isolation, emotions stop being shared and start being managed. Weakness stops being comforted and starts being corrected. Thought slows down. Observation sharpens. You stop performing and start calibrating. Every impulse is examined. Does this make me more durable or more exposed? Nothing grows here accidentally. Everything either adapts or dies. This is the lens shift you were never taught. Alone does not mean vulnerable. Alone means unfiltered. Alone means the system has removed external noise to see if you are structurally sound. Hardened men are not created in crowds. They are carved out in silence. And once this frame locks in, you stop asking when help will return. You start asking what must be burned away so you never need it again. Softness is not kindness. It is a survival error disguised as virtue. You were taught that being emotionally open makes you human, that empathy earns loyalty, that expressing vulnerability builds trust. This training was not designed to strengthen you. It was designed to make you legible, predictable, manageable. A man who broadcasts his internal state can be steered without force. Softness is signal leakage. At the psychological level, softness is the compulsion to be seen, validated, understood. It is the need to externalize discomfort instead of converting it into adaptation. When pressure rises, the soft man looks outward. He seeks reassurance, alignment, permission. This reflex is automatic and fatal in competitive systems. Predators do not hunt strength, they hunt hesitation. The softness trap activates when isolation removes witnesses. Without an audience, the soft man collapses inward. His thoughts spiral because they were never trained to operate without feedback. His emotions spike because they were always regulated socially, never internally. He mistakes this destabilization for proof that he is broken. He is not broken, he is unarmored. Softness feels moral because it was rewarded early. Teachers praised it, peers accepted it, institutions normalized it. But those environments were artificial shelters, low-risk, high-buffer zones. They selected for compliance, not resilience. Once you exit them, the same traits invert. What once earned approval now attracts exploitation. Softness creates 3 liabilities. First, it increases reaction time. You feel before you act. Second, it increases transparency. Others can read you faster than you can read them. Third, it increases dependence. You require external regulation to stabilize internal chaos. These liabilities compound under isolation. When alone, the soft man does not rest, he ruminates. He replays conversations, imagines judgments, invents narratives. His mind becomes a hostile environment because it was never trained for sovereignty. It was trained for exchange. This is why softness and isolation are incompatible. The world does not punish softness immediately. It waits. It lets the soft man climb just high enough to be useful, then removes support. That moment reveals everything. Under pressure, softness doesn't bend, it implodes. Decisions stall, boundaries blur, values are traded for relief, and relief is expensive. Hardness, by contrast, is emotional containment, not suppression, compression. You feel, but you do not leak. You register threat without announcing it. You process pain privately, then re-enter the field adjusted, not damaged. Hardness is silence under stress. This is why hardened individuals are often misread as cold or ruthless. They are neither. They simply refuse to externalize weakness. Their interior life is fortified. Their reactions are delayed until useful. Their emotions are tools, not masters. The softness trap convinces you that hardness is inhuman, that without expression you will fracture. This is false. What fractures you is unmanaged exposure. What strengthens you is pressure applied inward, not outward. Isolation exposes the trap because there is no one left to reward softness. No applause for honesty, no comfort for struggle, just outcomes, just consequences, just reality. This is the moment most men flee. They return to noise, to relationships, to identity shelters where softness is still mistaken for depth. But those who remain begin to rewire. They stop asking how they feel and start asking what functions. Softness asks, "Am I okay?" Hardness asks, "Am I operational?" Once that question changes, your psychology begins to harden naturally. Emotions shorten, focus lengthens, dependence weakens. You stop narrating your inner world and start governing it. This is not cruelty,
it is calibration. And until softness is identified as the trap it is, isolation will feel like punishment instead of preparation.
Under pressure, men reveal their true category. Not their morals, not their intentions, their operational type. Isolation doesn't create these types, it exposes them. The first type is the dependent. He requires external structure to function. Without it, his behavior degrades rapidly. His confidence is borrowed, his discipline is supervised, his identity is relational. When alone, he disintegrates because there is nothing propping him up. The dependent confuses attachment with strength. He believes alliances are protection, not leverage. Loyalty is his currency, but it is a weak one. When support disappears, he panics, not because danger increased, but because his operating system shut down. Dependents seek groups instinctively. They mirror dominant personalities, adopt borrowed opinions, and call it conviction. In isolation, they feel lost, not because direction vanished, but because direction was never internal. These men are not failures, they are tools, useful in numbers, disposable alone. The second type is the operator. He functions independently, but not autonomously. He understands power, but only in relation to others. He reads people, anticipates moves, and exploits dynamics. He can survive alone temporarily, but he prefers leverage. The operator doesn't need validation, he needs advantage. Isolation to him is inefficient, not terrifying. He re-enters groups strategically, forms temporary alliances, extracts value, then detaches before exposure. His weakness is subtle. He still depends on environments to activate his edge. Operators are dangerous to dependents and useful to systems. They stabilize chaos just enough to profit from it. They are rewarded, promoted, and protected until they are no longer needed. The third type is rare, the sovereign. The sovereign does not require structure, audience, or alignment to operate. His discipline is internal. His values are non-negotiable. His identity does not fluctuate based on approval or rejection. Isolation does not weaken him, it sharpens him. He does not seek alliances, he evaluates them. The sovereign uses isolation as a forge. While others seek relief, he consolidates. While others collapse into emotion, he refines procedure. He does not perform power, he embodies it. When he enters a group, the dynamic shifts without him speaking. This is why sovereigns are often misunderstood. They appear distant, uncooperative, even threatening. Systems sense that he cannot be controlled through reward or exile. He is not dependent on inclusion, and therefore cannot be disciplined socially. Selection pressures favor this type in high-stakes environments. Here is the threat most men avoid acknowledging. You do not choose your category through belief. You choose it through behavior under isolation. When support vanishes, which pattern activates? Do you search for rescue? Do you search for leverage? Or do you stabilize internally and proceed? Isolation answers this without mercy. Most men oscillate between dependent and operator, mistaking adaptability for strength. But oscillation is instability. When conditions tighten, instability is called first. Only self-contained systems persist. This is why the transition to sovereign is violent. It requires the death of relational identity. The part of you that measures worth through response must be amputated. The reflex to explain yourself must be burned out. The desire to be understood must be replaced with the need to be effective. This shift does not feel empowering. It feels lonely, quiet, cold. That is how you know it is real. Sovereignty is not confidence. It is irrelevance to judgment. Isolation reveals whether you are still negotiating your identity or commanding it. Dependence collapse.
operators maneuver, sovereigns endure, then dominate. The environment will test you again, it always does, and when it does, it will not ask who you are, it will observe how you function when no one is watching. History is not shaped by the compassionate, it is shaped by the durable. This is the lie modern narratives avoid acknowledging. Survival precedes morality. Before values are debated, something must endure. Civilizations, empires, bloodlines, institutions, none were preserved by softness. They were preserved by individuals who could operate when support collapsed and consequences were irreversible. Isolation has always been the test chamber of power. Strip away technology, law, and comfort, and human behavior reverts instantly. Resources concentrate, hierarchies harden, mercy becomes selective. Those unable to self-regulate are absorbed or erased. This pattern is not cruel, it is efficient. Nature does not negotiate with fragility. Look backward without sentiment, and the pattern repeats. Leaders were forged in exile. Commanders were refined after defeat. Rulers emerged from betrayal, not consensus. Those who survived isolation returned altered, less expressive, more decisive, intolerant of weakness in themselves and others. Isolation compresses time. Lessons that take decades in comfort are learned in months under pressure. Human nature has not evolved past this. It has only learned to disguise it. Modern systems delay selection through safety nets and social cushioning, but they cannot eliminate it. They only postpone it. When pressure returns, and it always does, the hardened rise quickly because they were already adapted. The softened panic because they were insulated. This is why crises expose leaders instantly, not through speeches, but through behavior. Who freezes? Who seeks permission? Who waits for consensus? And who acts decisively without reassurance? History remembers the last category. Isolation also reveals something darker. Groups instinctively turn on the weak under threat. This is not ideology, it is biology. When survival is uncertain, tolerance contracts, burdens are identified, dependents are rationalized away. This is why moral posturing collapses fastest under pressure. The hardened understand this and prepare accordingly. They do not rely on fairness, they do not expect loyalty, they do not assume stability. They assume volatility and build themselves to function inside it. When chaos arrives, they are not shocked, they are activated. This is the advantage isolation gives you, rehearsal. While others live under the illusion of permanence, the isolated live inside contingency. They plan without guarantees. They decide without applause. They accept that loss is part of the operating environment, not a personal injustice. This mindset creates asymmetry. When systems fracture, the asymmetry already know how to move. When alliances break, they are not emotionally disoriented. When rules shift, they adapt without moral paralysis. They were never dependent on the rules to begin with. This is why history rewards the hardened, not because they favor them, but because they are still functional when others fail. Soft men hope for continuity. Hardened men prepare for rupture. Isolation teaches you that nothing is owed, not clarity, not support, not fairness, only consequence. Once this lesson is integrated, you stop wasting energy on outrage and start allocating it towards positioning. You become less expressive and more precise, less reactive and more anticipatory, less concerned about how events should unfold, and more focused on how to exploit how they actually do. This is the historical advantage of hardness. And this is the threat you are being prepared for, a world that will not slow down to accommodate your feelings, a world that selects silently, without explanation, and moves on without regret. Those who harden early do not fear this world, they inherit it.
Hardening is not an attitude, it is a system. Most men fail here because they mistake hardness for aggression or emotional numbness. That confusion keeps them oscillating, either leaking emotion or overcompensating with theatrics. Neither produces power. Both signal instability. Hardening is behavioral engineering under isolation. The first rule is containment. You stop externalizing internal states. No narration, no emotional broadcasting, no compulsive explanation. Feelings are processed privately, then converted into decisions. The moment discomfort appears, you do not seek relief, you extract data. What triggered it? What weakness did it expose? What adjustment removes it next time? Pain becomes information, not identity. The second rule is compression. You shorten reaction cycles. Hardened men do not immediately respond, they delay. Delay creates leverage. Silence forces others to reveal intent. Stillness unsettles those who rely on feedback. While others rush to stabilize emotions, you allow pressure to peak, then act cleanly. This is why hardened individuals appear calm under stress. They are not calm, they are withholding. The third rule is discipline without witnesses. Most men can perform when observed. Hardened men train when unseen. Isolation strips away social accountability, so internal accountability must replace it. You do what is required whether it is noticed or not, especially when it is not. This builds self-trust, which is non-transferable power. Next comes environmental denial. You stop depending on conditions being favorable. You train to operate tired, bored, unmotivated, unsupported. Comfort is treated as optional. Stability is treated as temporary. You do not wait to feel ready. You move while incomplete. This eliminates hesitation as a variable. Then there is identity minimization. You detach from narratives about who you are supposed to be. No good man, no misunderstood man, no moral theater. Identity becomes functional, not expressive. You measure yourself by output, not intention. This is where many resist because ego wants recognition. Hardened men starve it. Finally, there is solitary execution. You make decisions alone and live with them alone. No polling, no outsourcing blame, no shared responsibility. This is heavy, but it builds sovereignty. When outcomes hit, you absorb them without complaint, then recalibrate. Over time, something shifts. You stop craving alignment. You stop explaining choices. You stop reacting to disapproval. Your internal dialogue quiets because it is no longer debating, it is issuing commands. You begin to trust silence more than conversation, preparation more than reassurance. This is the real reward of hardening, internal order. Others will feel it before they understand it. Your presence becomes heavier, your absence becomes noticeable. You are no longer easily influenced because there is nothing to appeal to. No need for approval, no hunger for belonging. This is when isolation stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like control. Not comfort, control. And once this protocol locks in, you realize something unsettling. You were never meant to be supported. You were meant to be sufficient. Everything else was a delay. You cannot harden without executing something first. Not habits, not behaviors, an identity. The old self was built for approval, alignment, and emotional exchange. It learned early that survival came from being liked, understood, included. It adapted to social environments by becoming agreeable, expressive, flexible. That version of you was not weak, it was optimized for the wrong terrain. But terrain has changed. What once protected you now exposes you. The reflex to explain becomes a liability. The urge to be fair becomes hesitation. The need to be seen becomes leverage for others. This self cannot be upgraded. It must be terminated. Identity death is not symbolic. It is behavioral.
You stop reacting the way you used to and let the discomfort stand. You allow misunderstandings to persist. You refuse the impulse to clarify, justify, soften. This creates internal friction. That friction is the old identity starving. Most men cannot tolerate this phase. They interpret the discomfort as loss. It is not. It is withdrawal. The hardened identity is installed through repetition under silence. You act without announcing. You decide without consulting. You endure without advertising. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Emotional spikes flatten. Dependency signals weaken. Your sense of self detaches from response. You no longer ask, "How am I perceived?" You ask, "Am I positioned?" This is the replacement. The hardened self is quieter, not louder. It speaks less because it needs less. It does not rush to connect. It does not chase clarity. It does not correct misinterpretations unless they interfere with execution. It is not cold out of spite. It is cold out of efficiency. This self understands that most interactions are not about truth. They are about leverage. It reveals nothing it does not intend to use. It withholds emotion, not to manipulate, but to remain ungraspable. Control flows to what cannot be read. This is why hardened men feel threatening, not because they attack, but because they do not signal submission. The final break happens when you accept a brutal realization. No one is coming. Not to rescue you, not to validate the transformation, not to applaud restraint. The hardened self is born without ceremony. And that's why it lasts. Once installed, regression becomes unlikely. You cannot unsee how exposed you were. You cannot unknow how easily softness was exploited. You cannot return to needing what you now generate internally. This is sovereignty. Not dominance over others, but irrelevance to their approval. The old self wanted safety through connection. The hardened self creates safety through capability. One begged the environment to be kind. The other adapts regardless of its cruelty. Only one survives prolonged isolation. Only one was ever meant to.
What you have learned here is not advice. It is a separation. This path was never meant for everyone, and it will not wait for consensus. Most men who encounter it will misunderstand it, dilute it, or reject it outright. They will call it extreme, unhealthy, antisocial, anything that allows them to return to comfort without consequence. That reaction is the filter working. Here is the final warning. The world you are entering will not reward hesitation. It will not pause for emotional processing. It will not protect those who require explanation before action. Pressure is increasing, not decreasing. Resources are consolidating. Tolerance for inefficiency is shrinking. Softness will be selected against quietly. No announcement, no collapse, just exclusion, missed opportunities, invisible ceilings, gradual irrelevance. You will not be attacked. You will simply stop being chosen. This is how most men disappear. They remain technically alive, socially functional, morally upright, and operationally obsolete. They mistake stability for security and familiarity for strength. By the time conditions tighten enough to expose them, it is already too late to adapt. Hardening is not a lifestyle choice, it is a timing issue. Those who delay this transformation until crisis arrives will not complete it. They will seek relief instead. They will negotiate. They will fracture under the weight of responsibility because they never trained for sovereignty. You have already crossed the line by staying this long. That does not make you superior, it makes you accountable. You now know what isolation is for. You now understand what softness costs. You now see what the hardened become when others hesitate. There is no ceremony from here, no community waiting, no reassurance, only application.
Either you integrate this and move forward colder, quieter, and more precise, or you return to the noise and accept your role within it. Both are valid outcomes, but only one maintains autonomy when pressure arrives. This is the last signal. What you do next determines whether isolation forges you or erases you.